So today we're joining Nicholas Anderson, who is the author of Knock, British Secret Operations, and we will be talking about a topic from his upcoming book this year, which will be released in 2012, which is Knock Twice. And Nicholas, you can tell us a little bit about the book and what it's about, and this particular topic, which is coming from the book. And I understand you can't talk about it in too deep of detail, because you definitely want people to make sure that they pick up the book whenever they read it, and you don't give too much away. But the topic is when China invaded Europe, which I'm very interested in hearing about.
Well, I should really say the first time was when Chinese-made product saturated our society in Europe and as well as in North America. But my story, though, takes place between 1976 and 1978 in Albania, which is a country the size of Belgium or Maryland in your country. It's in Eastern Europe, and it was invaded economically by China. How it came about was from right after World War II in 1945 to 1961, the Soviet Union considered Albania to be one of its satellite states. When it left the country, they gave up on them. Yugoslavia, now known as the former Yugoslavia, took over control, but they didn't stay there too long. And then soon after that, Albania played a role in helping China get admitted to the United Nations. And they were rewarded then economically in all sorts of ways, or perhaps it's a better word to use is subsidized. China subsidized Albania for about up to 90% of what the Russians had done for them. So from this period around 1962 to 1976, China slowly built up relations with Albania. And then Mao died on 9 September 1976, and the new leaders decided to crank up things politically, sending around 2,000 troops secretly to China, along with military aircraft. A little scary. They established armed forces presence in Europe, in Albania, and then when it was discovered that they intended to send some 40,000 more troops, only then did the West stop this military invasion of Europe. It was quite similar, really, to what the Americans experienced with the blockade of Cuba to stop the Soviet vessels arriving. And I won't give away exactly how it happened, because that will be in my book. But we did manage to make them leave Europe. I will say that it was only a crack team from a number of European countries. A crack team was assembled for this covert task to remove them. And that story is in Knock Twice, and hopefully you'll read about it then.
Wow, that's quite an interesting story then. So I hope you don't mind if I try to ask a couple questions, and of course, you don't want to give too much away, so a polite no is fine. But I'm wondering, was it largely a naval landing? In other words, did they bring everything in container ships and that sort of thing?
No,
No?
it wasn't. No. It
Interesting.
was, as I mentioned, a crack team from European countries, including myself. We spent time living in the Albanian mountains, and we found ways to get them out.
Oh, no, I actually did mean China. Like, how did, for example, they could have arrived by naval military ships, or they could have arrived by commercial container ships. I'm just kind of wondering how it is that they managed to get that much hardware in such a place that it raised, a lot of alarms. Was it fairly obvious that it was being done, or was it something that was being done without many people knowing about it?
Well, when you mean many people knowing about it, it was something that the intelligence services of Europe were monitoring.
Hmm.
It wasn't something that you read about in the media, because it would have been alarming
Right.
to the public to know that.
Sure.
But don't forget now, this is a period from about 1962 to 1976 that they were slowly building up. So
Oh.
you can't watch them every 5 minutes over a long period like that.
So then they kind of snuck things in over a period of time, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, after Mao died, then suddenly 2,000 troops were there by air.
Wow.
Yeah. So don't forget now, Albania is an extremely mountainous country. There's all sorts of nook and crannies everywhere, so it's not easy to see what's happening there.
So it's kind of a place that's sort of really ripe for guerrilla warfare, as opposed to a flat area with a lot of sand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very different terrain.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story that one time I was up there, and some of the team saw an aircraft coming down. As we're looking down from the top of the mountains, was looking down at a flat area and a runway. And we saw a plane land, and they identified it as a Chinese aircraft. And we went down there to investigate. It took several days to get down there, but that aircraft never took off. And we could not find it. And my best guess is that's almost a James Bond story, really. I think it just went into the mountains and was covered, or went into some large cave.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say in the span of 10 years, I would imagine that they could easily build some sort of a tunnel system, as we had, talked about a little bit before. That hiding things underground makes it very hard to detect by satellite and by close aircraft surveillance.
Yeah. I will add a little an aside. I know you were going to ask me anyway, but the motion picture Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, based on the book by John Le Carre, that's up for an Oscar. According to Le Carre himself, the fictional character George Smiley was based on one of his school teachers, who we call the Reverend Vivian Green, who later taught at Oxford University, where Le Carre attended. However, the name Smiley, who Le Carre has never attributed to anybody, was, as far as I'm concerned anyway, was a real retired SIS officer who lived in Somerset, which is one of the counties of England, and retired to Spain. And when we were getting debriefed to go to Albania for this mission, it was then that a Colonel David Le Crespigny Smiley debriefed us in preparation. And as far as I'm concerned, I think Mr. Carre must have taken his name, because he was a decorated officer from that period, from the period after World War II, and he was up in Albania and Yugoslavia. So when it turned out that we were going to go, he started to debrief us about what to look for.
So I would.
I always thought, well, his name's Smiley. He must have got it from there.
Probably so. I was just wondering, since it's sort of relevant to with Le Carre and your efforts as a novelist. I was just kind of wondering, does this mean that his time in the SIS preceded yours by a generation, or is it possible there was an overlap?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, when this old gentleman, Colonel Smiley, was debriefing us, I mean, he was, I'm guessing he was in his 60s and 70s, and I was only a 25, 26-year-old young man.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
Yeah, that's
Interesting story.
yeah. That's kind of a interesting backstory. Now, do you think that you might include that in your novel whenever you write that? I mean, are these all things that you plan to include in the novel, or
What, the part about Mr. Smiley?
Sure.
No, it's just something I just thought you would be interested to hear about.
Yes, it is anecdotal, and it's also timely because the Oscars are going to be coming soon.
Yes, yeah. So, there's more to it than that I'm letting on, but fascinating to myself even after all this time that no one knew about that.
Well, I did understand certainly what you were talking about initially as far as the manufacturing invasion by China. I know that there's a lot of companies, especially in the U.S. I have personal firsthand experience with working with a particular company who, when they were, having their product manufactured, they were contacted by folks in China to have their product made more cheaply. And so what happened was is that they got up and running, and they found that they were able to produce it more cheaply and reliably, and they actually closed down the American manufacturing of the same product because it was so inexpensive in China. And then guess what the Chinese did? They doubled their prices once the manufacturing plants were closed.
The next head person of China is actually currently in the United States meeting President Obama. And, there's all these things that are going on, not just with China, but lots of countries where they put on a public face, and then there's all this skullduggery going on below the surface. So I'm so used to it.
Yeah, well, I think that it's certainly something that people have become far more aware of, and I think that the internet.
In Europe here, when they talk about the Arab Spring, they say it's also the American Fall. Because some skullduggery comes to the surface about, especially in Libya, what the UK and the US were doing there.
Right.
Before with Gaddafi. And now we'll find out, hopefully, with Egypt and Tunisia and Syria, what was really going on, if the Syrians win their little war here.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Syria, and I do know that there's a lot of interesting developments that have come about in Iran, and yeah, it's definitely a different world with the internet. We certainly, you and I would not be talking really if it weren't for being involved with publishing ebooks on the internet for sale on the internet, sharing ideas, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a smaller world, less room for skullduggery whenever the world is so small because of the internet.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Okay, well,
I found that history repeats itself somewhere. It comes around again.
Yes, it does. I know that what's happening with the banking industry right now, and kind of globally, as a matter of fact, a lot of the things that they're saying now are things that they were saying after the original Great Depression, that the banks have to reassess what they're doing and all that sort of stuff. But in another 40, 50, 60 years, will probably the same exact thing will happen again. Hopefully not, but it's bound to happen. Okay. Well, thank you again so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And was there anything that you wanted to include before we wrap up this conversation?
No, I hope that people will end up going to places like Albania for holidays. Because I understand that all the bunkers that we used to see at the top of hills over there, literally thousands of bunkers all over Albania, because the leaders were paranoid about a nuclear attack. I don't know why they thought anybody would want to attack Albania, but if you went for a holiday there, it would be one of the most surreal things to look at.
Very interesting. Now, if somebody wanted to get more information about you, and if they were interested in being aware of when your book is coming out this year, and if they're also interested in your present book that's for sale, which is NOC, British Secret Operations, then they can go to nicholasanderson.info to get more information and also other details about yourself.
That's correct.
Great. Well, again, thank you for your time, and we'll speak again. Sure, thank you. Okay, well, there we go.